Now, the former American intelligence analyst Edward Snowden, currently in exile in Moscow, has revealed new details of what he claims are widespread US intelligence abuses of personal data collected by monitoring people's communications. He was interviewed by The Guardian itself, criticised by MPs over its handling of Snowden's data. We have the first broadcast excerpts from that interview. Paul Mason has this report.
In the year since Edward Snowden landed at a Russian airport, the world has changed. An Islamist terror group controls central Iraq.
Answer the call of Allah.
Hundreds of British youth are said to be fighting with the Al-Qaeda split-off, ISIS, in Syria. Russia itself has defied international law to annex Crimea and fuel armed revolt in East Ukraine. The game of spies has intensified, and, say the Americans, Snowden himself is no innocent abroad. So when The Guardian's editors interviewed Edward Snowden in Moscow this week, they couldn't avoid the accusations of aiding and abetting a country that, for many in Europe and America, now looks more like the enemy.
If I were providing information that I know that's in my head to some foreign government, the U.S. intelligence community would be able to detect that. They would see changes in the type of information that's going through it. They would see sources go dark that were previously productive. They would see new sources of disinformation appearing within these channels, and that hasn't happened.
Did you read the book about you by Edward Lucas, who works for The Economist, which claims essentially that you're a Russian spy?
No.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
yes.
He's crazy.
Right.
He's not credible at all.
After The Guardian published Snowden's revelations, British security agents came to the paper's offices and forced them to destroy laptops holding the sensitive files. Snowden believes most people still don't understand how intrusive mass surveillance by the NSA has been.
They now have access to all of your private records. Now, in the course of their daily work, they stumble across something that is completely unrelated to their work in any sort of necessary sense. For example, an intimate nude photo of someone in a sexually compromising situation, but they're extremely attractive. So what do? They turn around in their chair and they show their coworker. And their coworker says, oh, hey, that's great. Send that to Bill down the way. And then Bill sends it to George, George sends it to Tom. And sooner or later, this person's whole life has been seen by all of these other people.
Snowden revealed the American spy agency was collecting data via internet companies on a vast scale, often with their compliance. Now, he says, some of the most popular services in the world cannot be trusted.
Do you use Google?
No.
No?
I don't use Google.
Do you use Skype?
No. I have used Skype and Google Hangouts, which are great, but unfortunately security compromised services for public talks where they've been required, but I wouldn't use it for personal communications. We shouldn't trust them without verifying what their activities are, how they're using our data, and deciding for ourselves whether it's appropriate where they draw the lines.
Under US law, there's no defense of public interest for whistleblowers. Snowden is charged with espionage, but he hinted today he might return if he could face trial by jury.
I would be facing an unfair trial in which I can't even present a public interest defense to a jury of my peers. We've asked the government again and again to provide for a fair trial, and they've declined.
But for all the risks that lie ahead, Snowden remains unrepentant.
Regardless of what happens, if I end up in chains in Guantanamo, I can live with that.
Well, now Paul Mason is with us now. Paul, what was new in that?
Well, John, obviously The Guardian have partnered with Snowden in the release of the information, and they have harboured the information. It's not exactly a hostile interview, but it is the first time that somebody's put to him this charge from the West, from the Western intelligence agencies: are you a Russian spy? Now, he denies it, and if you look at the argumentation he uses, it's quite interesting, that if I was using my own knowledge on top of the stuff that I took away from the NSA, you would see a change in pattern of intelligence flowing to the West. Agents would shut down. Other sources of disinformation would start up. That is interesting because it's fair to say that sources have told Channel 4 News that security agencies in these countries have indeed seen changing patterns of intelligence due to Snowden's revelations. So what you would then ideally want is a supplementary question to him, which we don't get because the interview is being conducted by The Guardian and not ourselves. I think the other interesting thing is that anecdote he tells of what it's like inside the the NSA. He alleges they are showing nude pictures of any old Joe on the street to each other in clear, breach of people's moral rights.
Paul Mason.